There's a little bit of debate on whether Germany will see a recession, a hard recession, whether you can avoid a recession because this is only a technical recession. What is the House view of the Ministry of Finance?
Well, we have to avoid recession, and so Germany has to change some policies. Last year and beginning of this year, we made efforts to consolidate our federal budget. Our debt to GDP ratio is in the decline. But our next project has to be to strengthen the framework conditions for our economy by supply-side measures, which means more flexibility for the labor market, public sector investments, and cutting red tape for our economy. And then the growth perspective will improve, I'm sure.
But, Minister, there's, I guess, an orthodox view in how to deal with the economy in a downturn, which is states should invest, of course, when an economy is in downturn, make provisions for when bad times are ahead. Now, your government are in favor of suspending, for example, the constitutional debt brake and helping Germany out of a crisis. You are the one blocking it. Do you worry? Do you not worry that this means more trouble ahead?
No. Well, in fact, we have to fight inflation. It would not be good advice to counteract the ECB's efforts to reduce the inflation rates by more public sector expenditures. But having said this, we maintain a very high level of public sector investment. Actually, it's higher than pre-pandemic. And so there is no choice we have to make, whether we respect the debt brake or we invest taxpayers' money. We do both by deciding for priorities.
But, Minister, it seems that if you had to choose between fighting inflation or focusing on growth, you'd rather fight inflation. Is that fair?
If I would have to make the choice between fighting inflation or fostering growth, then in first instance we have to reduce the inflation rate. But I think this is not really a conflict because we can focus on the supply side policies, and then we in the midterm we improve the growth perspective of our economies, especially the SMEs, and we fight inflation in the same political situation.
Minister, the country's highest court has declared, of course, the transfer of funds, the special funds outside the regular budget to be unconstitutional. This ruling has really plunged the government into a crisis. Were you not prepared for this scenario?
No, there is no government crisis. There is no budget crisis in Germany. But in fact, the Constitutional Court has made for the first time a decision about the debt brake of our constitution. This is quite new. Switzerland has more experience with their debt brake, so it's the first decision, and we had to decide for the consequences. And this ruling of the Constitutional Court, it was so unexpected, and some principles has been shifted by the Constitutional Court. So now we have made the necessary decisions. Now we are compliant with the Constitution, and now we can work further on the turnaround in our fiscal policies and the growth perspective.
But, Minister, you say the government is not in crisis, but you can't tell me that the three parties are getting along. How would you describe the current the three parties in your own words?
Well, it's three very different parties: two left-wing party and one more or less centristic, social market economy-driven party, the Liberal Party, which I have the honor to lead. And of course, we have to consider policies, and there are different perspectives. And the good news is, in the end, we find consensus.
So there's no danger of a breakup?
There is no danger. Frankly, the process of decision-making could be more silent, could be faster. But in the end, there are good decisions. Now, think about the German situation after the unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine. After the Russian attack, we had to completely reinvent our energy infrastructure, which we were so dependent on Russian energy imports. And last year here in Davos, there were still concerns whether Germany is capable of managing this situation. And we did, of course, the growth is not satisfying, but others thought there would be a huge economic crisis in Germany, but there hasn't anything like this.
We saw a lot of people on the street on Monday, a lot of protests because of also, the negotiations.
The farmers.
Some of this,
I'm talking about
I'm talking about the farmers, but there seems to be in general just a lot of discontent because of the negotiations in the budget cuts.
No, I think my explanation is slightly different. We had a decade with very low interest rates, and now Germany is paying, in the long-term perspective, normal interest rates, which means, in consequence, not 4 billion euros, but 40 billion euros of interest in the public budget. We are not familiar with this situation. Then the situation during the pandemic and the energy price hikes, we supported the private households and the economy, and people are now not experienced any longer with cost cuts and with consolidation of the budget. And to make it...
So you think it will settle? Is that fair?
It is a change of policies after a decade, and now we have to consolidate and to make it more concrete. We have to reduce the subsidies for the agricultural sector about 150 million a year. But we are still paying 9 billion euros.
Right.
And so I think they can afford. If we change the framework conditions, less red tape for them, and then the German farmers will succeed.
Minister, you've also agreed with the coalition that there's an option, of course, to suspend the debt brake for 2024.
No, there's no option.
After all, there's no option?
There's no option.
So there's nothing that has been agreed by the three parties under any scenario?
No. Actually, the budget committee of the parliament will make the final decisions this night, and the parliamentary groups of our coalition have already made public that there will be no exception from the constitutional debt brake for this year.
Minister, do you worry about the rise of the far right in certain states in Germany? Is this a concern?
Yes, of course. Populistic movements are always a concern. They have very easy answers for very complicated challenges. Think about the Brexit. And the situation is similar in Germany. Our right-wing populists, they suggest Germany would benefit from exiting the European Union, but the single market is of paramount importance for our economy, and the European Union is a partnership of member states which share the same values. And in this geopolitical situation, if there were no European Union, we should found it.
Minister, do you think the government is responsible for this rise on the far right?
No, not the government. It is the situation. And we have to deal with challenges like migration. And our responsibility is to solve the problems of people. We have to minimize the concerns which have maximized the right-wing populists. And now we have a new approach in migration. In fact, we have changed the policies of the Merkel era completely. And this is one of the efforts we have to make to reduce the support for these right-wing parties. As I mentioned, cutting red tape, improving the economic perspective of our country, improving education in Germany, investing in the public sector infrastructure will make them smaller.